This video is going to demonstrate how to paint a blurry bokeh background. That'll add a lot more depth to your paintings. This is a natural scene, so I'm going for a blurry forest look in the background. So we're going to use mostly greens naturally. I'm going to use a primary, so this is primary blue, primary yellow. Put some white, some black. We'll have light spots, dark spots, and once everything gets blended out, it'll give a nice blurry look. And if you put that clear foreground, like in this case it's a hummingbird, but you can put whatever you want, but when you do that and you have that blurry background, it can really add a lot. So first thing, I'm just mixing up a base green and I'm starting my blend. This is a blender mop brush. I'm going to add a little yellow, brighten it up, and just do a basic background undercoat with a gradient of green. It'll make it a little more interesting, and then once we add our second layer and start blending in the blurry spots, if it gets washed out or blended out in certain spots, it'll just add to the painting more. It'll give you green that shows through different shades of green. If you have trouble with mixing your own colors and you want to learn how to do this, you don't have to buy every single individual paint. I'll put a video at the end that explains that. And then this underpainting to get this blended gradient background, I have a bunch of videos that explain that too, so I'll put those at the very end. So just from top right to bottom left of this canvas, this is an 8 by 10 inch canvas. It's raw, no gesso, anything like that. I just used that blender brush, mixed up some brighter greens and some darker greens, added more blue for that dark green, added more yellow for the light spots, added a little white up there in that right corner, and then I'm just using dry, clean, soft bristled wash brushes to blend this out and smooth it out. And then once this dries, we'll have a good base to work on. Now at this point, once that's dry, let that completely dry, and then we can start to add our second layer and really get that blurred look with this second layer. But I'm adding white, yellow, blue, and I'm using filbert brushes here. They have a rounded, wide tip, and I found them to be really good in blending. And I'm just dipping this in warm, clean water and getting off the excess, so the bristles are just a bit moist so that paint moves around well, but we don't want it too wet or we don't want it too dry. And I'm just adding a yellowish glow in the upper right, and this is going to be sunlight filtering through those leaves and trees. It'll give that impression once it's blended out. And then I'm using that same light green, I'm adding it to our base green, putting a little blue in there, so we'll have a light right upper corner, dark lower area, and that'll give the impression of the canopy with the light filtering through in the upper right, and then in the lower left it'll be the shaded areas, tree trunks, things like that. But it's just a vague impression, and that's what gives that depth. Once you add a clear foreground subject, then having this in the background really helps. But just adding different shades of greens, you can get creative here, but having a super light lime green, even yellows and whites in certain spots, and then darker mid greens, blue greens, and then we'll even add a little black to the blue here and get our shadow color. So this is a very dark blue green with a bit of black also, and we can start to work that in. And the thing is, whenever you're doing this, you just want to add a bunch of varying shades of whatever your overall tone is, and then just make sure that you don't have clean edges. So you don't want any shapes with defined edges. Everything should be blended out well. And when you do that, then you'll get that bokeh effect. And at this point, we're just laying paint, different shapes, different colors, different sizes. I'm using a smaller filbert brush here, and I'm working in a lime green around those white yellow spots to simulate sunlight filtering through the leaves, and just laying it on and then blending everything out. So just looking at the edges, just pull the edge out, and then as it comes out, just keep pulling it out and out until it fades, and that's how you'll get a good small blend. You can use a dry brush once you lay your paint. You can get another drier filbert brush and blend out those edges with that, and that dry bristle will scrub out the color a bit and you'll get a different effect. Then you can use a moist brush and blend it out with a moist brush, different size brushes. You can use your finger, you'll see. I tend to use my fingers to blend out things such as this on occasion, and it gives a nice look. You can try different things just to add variation in your painting. I'm just mixing up some blues to get in there with the greens. Just be subtle with it. I want everything to be mostly green, but this just adds a little bit of cooler, natural look. Just various dots and shapes. The brush is mostly dry here, and I'm just scrubbing it out, keeping it thin. If it's too wet, if your bristles are too wet with this dark color, it may just overdo it. So just trying to add a leaf look, so simulating just a bunch of these light green dots, simulate a lot of leaves up there in that the right corner that are a bit brighter, and again filtering that sunlight through. You can use your finger just to get a little different look. Like we talked about before, just keeping everything different. Sometimes using a moist bristle, sometimes dry bristles, sometimes your finger. If you switch it up, then you'll get different looks. once you get to this point, um, I'm just going over everything, making sure it's blended out, stepping back, seeing if anything jumps out at me, if anything's too uniform, if there's any defined shapes or colors that I don't want to be, making sure that it is giving the impression that we want. All those leaves catching light in the upper right, and then the darker areas in the bottom left. Just adding some finishing touches and brightening up things and darkening up other things, but really just making sure everything's blurry and blended at this point is the main thing. So now it's to the point where you're kind of ready to put something defined in the foreground and really set that back. So anyways, hope this helped. I'll put all the materials in the description, and then at the very end of this video I'll put that color blending video and then background blending video too. So thanks for watching.